Welcome to another episode of The Edge, presented by the Bluntness. I'm your host, Gregory Frye, and today I have a very special guest, Cyo Nystrom, CEO and co-founder of Quim. Cyo, thank you so much for joining us today. Please, for our guests who haven't met you yet, I wonder if you could just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about what you guys are up to over at Quim.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Gregory said, my name is Cyo, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Quim. Quim is a self-care line for humans with vaginas and humans without vaginas who love vaginas. So we make plant-based intimate care products, and those are also infused with THC and CBD. Quim was really born out of my own personal health problems. All the women in my family are super susceptible to UTIs and yeast infections. And I got my first UTI when I was about 18, and that turned into a kidney infection, which put me in the hospital. I had to go on multiple rounds of antibiotics. I think, as we all know, antibiotics are a godsend when you really need them, but they also wipe your body of all of the good bacteria, leaving you exponentially more likely to contract a vaginal yeast infection. And so years of enduring this process, which I will get into, I'm sure we'll get into more later, sort of the underlying causes for a lot of these health problems and, sort of not particularly body conscious ingredients. Because I knew that I was susceptible to these issues and about enduring this cycle for about 8 years, I started to look into proactive vaginal care. There weren't a lot of products out there. And so I started making my own based on research I was doing. I identified a few plant-based ingredients that were really helpful for maintaining a healthy vaginal pH, keeping UTIs and yeast infections away, which is really great because, over 50% of people with vaginas prefer to have sex with some type of lubricant. And then in 2015, I started working in the cannabis industry and started to learn more about the topical benefits of cannabis. And what I learned is that when cannabis is absorbed vaginally, it works as a vasodilator. So it's actually going to increase blood flow to that part of your body, augmenting your body's natural lubrication, essentially creating a vaginal, a clitoral, a vulvular erection, which I think is super cool. I often think of our products as Viagra for people with vaginas. And so that's, I would say for me, that was really the first aha moment about putting weed in my vagina. I was like, oh my gosh, this makes it easier to achieve orgasm. It takes about, the first iterations of the products I was making, it would take, 10 to 20 minutes to feel the effects, which at least for me, I think is actually really amazing in that when you put these products on yourself or your partner puts them on you, you're really sort of setting the stage for a sensual experience. And I think it sort of slows down the sexual encounter and maybe increases the length of foreplay because you won't really feel the effects for about, 10 to 20 minutes. That's now changed now that we use, some of the products, it still stays like that. For our latex-based product, we use a nano emulsion that tends to kick in a little bit faster. But I actually really like that because I think, the brain is the largest sex organ we have. And I think, for so many people, a lot of women specifically, we hear this from that it's hard to make space for sensual time in your head first. We're working, we're sometimes taking care of children, sometimes taking care of pets, taking care of the house, taking care of our families. And I think the first step to make that space is actually really important. As the industry evolved, as our own understanding of, the plant really evolved, we started to see and learn more about CBD and the topical benefits of CBD in intimate situations. 9 out of 10 people with vaginas have experienced pain with penetration. And so CBD as an anti-inflammatory, it can really help relax those soft tissue muscles in your vagina. So if you have endometriosis or PCOS, or have PTSD from sexual trauma, topical or vaginally applied CBD can be incredibly helpful for like relaxing the pelvic floor. And also maybe my favorite application of CBD is with our product called Happy Clam Everyday Oil. And it's our first product. It's a CBD product that was really designed not necessarily for sex, but for post-sex. So a lot of people experience what is colloquially known as puffy taco. It's probably my favorite euphemism because even if you've never heard it, you know exactly what it means. And no one really talks about it. Like, post-coital vaginal inflammation is a real thing. And it can, especially if, maybe you have one of these underlying conditions or perimenopausal or menopausal and are experiencing increased vaginal dryness. Well, that, increased dryness means more friction, which means more inflammation post-sex. So I love that product a lot because it's, we think of it as like an eye cream for your vagina. Not so much in the cosmetic sense, but in that it's like a really soothing product that is just for you and your vagina. And that's kind of cool.
What is it about these products that people with vaginas should be careful about when they're shopping and navigating all the options?
Yeah. So, as I said earlier, I was in this like 8-year UTI yeast infection cycle. And I think a lot of that starts earlier on in the cycle, like before you get a UTI. I think it starts with, the type of lubricants that you're using. The majority of widely accessible lubricants are glycerin based. Glycerin is a product we use in soaps, we use in lotions, we use in so many different products, but it's also a metabolic byproduct of sugar. So if you have bacterial vaginosis or a low-lying yeast infection, you're essentially feeding all of that bacteria, feeding it a bunch of sugar, which will just make it grow and multiply. So I think that was one of the first things that I noticed that, when I was doing my own research. And, Quim's products, they're ethically made. We use organic, ingredients, and they're not cheap because, we put a lot of, it's a business, but also we work with the best sourcing and best vendor options. We use Myron glass, which is UV protected, so your products will last longer. But, I always say that, if you don't need Quim's products, then don't buy them. If you get one thing from this conversation, it should be to switch to an aloe vera-based lube. Aloe vera is naturally pH balancing, it's anti-candidal, and it doesn't dry tacky like those other lubes. Another thing is, condom companies and tampon companies are actually not required to list all of the ingredients in their products. So I think you often, a lot of people have sensitivity to latex, but also the majority of latex condoms come lubricated. And if that's a glycerin-based lubrication, well, maybe you're actually having, maybe it's the glycerin-based lube that's irritating your skin and not the latex. And so I think, just really reading the ingredients on the products that you're using. And, in general, I think it's good if you can mostly understand what the ingredients are. Even more personally, I was raised by a single mom. And when I was 4 years old, my mom told me that my dad was going to prison for nonviolent cannabis crimes, which was a really bold decision, I think, for her to tell a 4-year-old that. Something I think about a lot, because the way she told it to me was I think it was very brave, and it gave me a lot of agency, which I think, as someone who wants to have kids one day, I think about the ways that I can empower my children. And she said, I want to let you know this. I want you to know that your dad didn't hurt anyone. And she was like, I also want you to know that your dad is going to prison for something that I think should be legal. I think all drugs should be legal. And I was like, okay, prison, like what? When you're 4 years old, like for me, I associated prison with like bad guys. And I was like, okay, well, is this a secret? And she was just like, oh, honey, this is your information and I'm not going to tell you, you can't tell people. She was like, I will tell you that if you do tell people, if you tell your friends at school, they might treat you differently or their parents might treat you differently. And that is hard. And that is a heavy load to carry. And so I didn't tell people. I really kept that to myself until entering the cannabis industry and realizing that it was actually, it gave me deeper purpose for being there, particularly as these regulations were being rolled out in, 2017, the opportunity to actually participate in the legislative process to ensure that the people who really built this industry, the medicine makers, the growers, the people that weren't venture-backed startups, that they were able to stay in the industry and that they would be guaranteed protections from the law so that their families wouldn't have to feel that same shame that I did growing up.
That's huge in cannabis because, obviously we can't just be here to get people stoned. That's not enough of a purpose. And, I wonder if you'd like to elaborate a little more about your purpose and some of the challenges that you encounter as an entrepreneur in this industry.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there are plenty of people in this industry who their purpose is to get people stoned. And I think that is totally A-okay. Getting stoned is good news. And so I don't think everyone needs sort of a sob story to motivate them. I think for me personally, if it was just about getting people stoned, if it was just about making money, I mean, those are great things, but they're not the things that keep you going when things are tough. So, it's like when we were fundraising, fundraising has been, it's been a struggle for us. We were on the pitch circuit and we would win all these pitch competitions, but still not, we're struggling to close investors because I think so many investors saw our business as not one sin industry, cannabis, but as two. So you were dealing with sex and cannabis. And I think a lot of people were like, you've just put too many hurdles in front of your path to success. There are so many businesses we can't work with. There are so many retailers we can't work with because we're either sex products or cannabis products. There are so many platforms that won't allow us to advertise. So there are a lot of challenges. Obviously COVID had major impacts on our business, up until in 2019, the majority of our business was wholesale. So we were selling either on the THC side, selling to dispensaries or selling to retailers like Urban Outfitters or Anthropologie or Good Vibrations. When COVID hit, all of those retailers, took a major, major hit. Even though dispensaries were able to stay open, it was for delivery or pickup. And we saw that our products, our products, I do think, require a high level of education, which you're not really going to get if you're not going into a store or if your business isn't designed to be an e-commerce business. So yeah, there are a lot of challenges on that side of the business. But meanwhile, in the midst of all of that, people started to online shop in a different way. We were seeing more transactions coming through our website than ever before. And I think it kind of presented this amazing opportunity for us to take a good hard look in the mirror and be like, okay, what's working? What's not? And we need to put all of our energy and resources to the parts of the business that are working. And so, other than, my own personal health journey and the relationship with my dad, it's getting emails from people that say this product changed my life, or, I'm going through cancer treatment right now and it set my body into early menopause, and using your products are the first time I've been able to have pleasurable sex for years. And so, or someone has, endometriosis or PCOS and finally has gotten some relief. So yeah, I think moments like that, they keep you going when times are hard. And of course, there are always going to be ups and downs when you're running a business in multiple sort of restricted categories.
Speaking of performance, As an entrepreneur in the space, I wonder what your thoughts are on the using cannabis creatively, whether it's during working hours, after, what are your thoughts on cannabis and creativity and the cannabis infused professional?
Yeah, there have been times in my life where cannabis is something that I would use during the day. For me, I think cannabis really, like a cannabis sativa joint it really sparks my creativity, but also the way my brain works is I have my best ideas in conversation. I'm really a people person, a people person, but like I'm a one-on-one person. And Rachel and I, my business partner, we are polar opposites in the way we think, in our strengths, in the things we like to do. I think that I always think of her as like marathon energy, and I'm more of like sprint energy. But, pre-COVID, when we were working together all the time, I would love to, once I got through most of my meetings for the day and like all of my mission critical emails, let's say around 4 or 5, smoke a little bit of a joint, definitely not a whole joint. I'm not as much of a heavyweight as I used to be. And then like brainstorm and then talk, okay, this is our like anything goes time. Like there are no bad ideas. And we had these 2 giant whiteboards and we would just like write everything down. And I would be like, what if we did this? Or like, what if we thought about it like this? Or like, what we should reach out to this company. And some of our like really best ideas or like best projects came from that. But the process of doing so was really satisfying because it was such a different way. It was such a different type of, a different way of using my brain. And that's something I really, really miss in COVID because, I think if I'm going to like consume cannabis by myself, it's usually more to like unwind, or it's like to go on a hike or like go outside. It's less in like, and that doesn't mean I have like some of my best ideas and I keep like a tiny little notebook with me. So I write them down so I don't forget. So it's still, I think, really can help me think about problems or think about the business in like new ways. It's also really, my husband and I, if we'll smoke a joint, I actually really, really appreciate talking through business stuff with him. He also runs his own business. And he's, very brilliant and similarly thinks about things very differently than I do. And so it can be really fun to just like rap with someone about the business and get insight into how they would do it.